Hey, welcome to the 100 Hours in About an Hour podcast. At the recording of this first episode, we hadn't decided on a name yet, so I wanted to record this intro with the proper name and all that. So sit back, listen, and enjoy. Hey, everybody's listening. This is Brendan, also known as Luigi Meister on other places on the internet.
And we're already start off to a great start. You can
Wow.
tell this is our first episode of a podcast that doesn't even have a name yet.
Yeah, it's okay. I can edit that out, and I can also edit in the name of the podcast in post, so it's fine.
Oh, great. This is Brock, also known as CFB on multiple forms of media. This is an RPG podcast.
Woo!
Never heard of that before. Woohoo.
I mean, I've actually been Googling around. I don't see too many like specifically focused on JRPGs. There's a lot of gaming podcasts, but
Oh, okay. Well, you can tell how much research I've done. I'm just here to vomit words, man.
yeah. Well, today we're gonna be vomiting words about retro JRPGs because it's probably the ones we played the most, and it's an easy thing to talk about.
Love those retro games for retro gamers such as myself.
And we're both real gamers over here.
Yeah.
The ones
That's
the
the
media
back
are
file
scared about.
and that cred.
So
Um,
when we say retro, real quick, because we might get some Zoomers in here. It's mostly stuff from like the '90s because we're both, well, not old, but old enough to. '90s is our retro.
I think I qualify as old, unfortunately.
I'm trying to deny it, but I'm over halfway to 50 now, so.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts feeling the same, don't worry.
So for me, the reason I even played any of these games growing up is because I had an older brother who who did some of that illegal emulation on the computer growing up. So I grew up on Super Nintendo games emulated on ZSNES.
The classic emulator, yep.
Yep. It specifically one of the games we'll be talking about later. ZSNES emulated it like so poorly, like it changed like the color palette, and I'm not really sure why. To this
I don't
day, I have no idea why.
I don't think the people that made that emulator understands why it did most of what it did, but it did have the cool snowfall background when you were selecting your ROM.
It did have a really good UI, right?
Yeah.
Like,
It's like that's what I think of when I think like emulation in the 90s and early 2000s is that emulator.
yeah, it had like the dark blue like file selector screen and everything.
Yeah. It's actually kind of funny because like the reason why I got into RPGs, and we're not going to talk about the games I'm talking about right now, but like I had older cousins and they had the Dragon Warrior game. Yes. And so Dragon Warrior 1 was like my first JRPG.
Oh
And
man.
I would say that I just walk around and grinded in that game because I didn't know what I was doing, but that's like what you do in that game. So I guess I was playing it right.
Yeah. Like I've played Dragon Warrior 1 briefly. I never actually finished it because I was young when I was playing it. But I just remember it's like super short. It's just like you grind until you're strong enough to actually beat the game, basically.
Yeah, you grind until you can buy the best stuff in the town. Then you walk across the bridge and grind until you can buy the best stuff in the next town. And then you get lost because you have to search specific tiles to find the MacGuffins to advance the plot. So it's a really great game.
Well, it's NES, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
okay. I'm trying to think of like besides Final Fantasy 1, which was a mess in and of itself on the NES, like what good NES RPGs were there?
Destiny of an Emperor.
Never heard of it actually.
It's like set in feudal China. Um, ACLCM actually speedruns it.
Oh, okay.
It's really cool. It looks kind of like a Dragon Quest game, like just from the view, but like it's a much faster pace, and like you have your units are armies,
Okay.
so their health is like the number of troops. It's actually like really sick. It's just all the moves are just named weird things. So if you don't have an instruction manual, you have no idea what's going on.
So it's like Lufia 1 then. Okay.
Yeah,
Where all the like spells and stuff, they don't even give you like descriptions, so you just have to guess.
yeah. Another, or if we're counting Famicom games, Sweet Home is another NES RPG that gets a lot of. It's definitely a cult hit. It's more of a horror RPG.
Yeah. I think I missed out on a lot of NES games, except for like the popular ones. So.
Yeah, outside of that, there's a few action RPGs like
Oh, is it Yeast NES RPG technically? like the original one?
I'm not super familiar with Ys. You have Crystalis.
I played Crystalis actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it has some RPGs.
I know. I'm pretty sure East, the one and two, the originals are NES RPGs, or
Yeah.
at the very least they were like on computers back when the NES came out. I'm not sure they ever got ported.
Okay. Yeah, Ys is one of those series that I'm not super familiar with, so I'm gonna be relying on you and or other people for that discussion.
Yeah, I'll probably like bring on uh like Mito or something. He's played East.
Yeah. Love that guy.
Mm-hmm. He's played a lot of like weird stuff that neither of us have played. So he's
Yeah.
one he got you into level. What you're gonna be talking about later, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
I think he just tweeted, can someone please, I can't remember if he specifically called me out. I need to go back and check. I think he specifically called me out to play it and I said okay, and I just played it and like I no life the game for like a week. And it was great. So yeah, I'm excited to get to that later.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, well, since I brought it up, we might as well go straight into it, right?
Yeah.
Before we had this episode, we wanted to have a little thing to talk about just to make sure we stayed a little bit on track.
Mhm.
And when I was like, well, let's if we're talking about retro RPGs, we might as well, what's our favorite and least favorite.
Yeah.
And so let's start out on a negative note.
Yeah.
You could go first because yours is probably be a little more recognizable than mine is.
Yeah, so I went with least favorite one that I finished specifically. I wasn't sure if that was a qualifier. And I'm gonna give a little context. Like, as a kid, I would go to Blockbuster or whatever, Hollywood Video or whatever, and I would rent, games to play. Like, or I say I would. My parents would be like, pick one out, and you can rent it, etc. And one game I always saw on the shelf and was never in stock, but the art and the cover looked really cool. And this is why I was excited to finally play this game when I played it. Was Breath of Fire 1 on Super Nintendo. I actually ended up playing it on the Game Boy Advance, probably 2010-ish era, right? So I
So the
played the
remake.
GBA version. It's pretty much the same game, Breath of Fire 1. I do not like this game, and it has made me not play any of the other games, even though I hear nothing but good things about Breath of Fire 3. I do want to play it at one point, but like it soured me on the whole series. I believe you haven't played it, right?
I have not. I played Breath of Fire 2.
And was that game like okay
Yeah,
at
it's all
least?
right. It's like every other SNES RPG. Like that
Yeah,
like the if you have like an average SNES RPG to
yeah.
to compare every other average SNES RPG to, that's what Breath of Fire 2 is.
I would describe Breath of Fire 1 as, if Breath of Fire 2 is the average SNES RPG, Breath of Fire 1 is the mediocre SNES
Oh
RPG
no.
that has like a few glaring flaws that made me very frustrated, because it has the thing that it's not the only one that's done this, but it just stuck out to me because I was just so excited. Like, I had this expectation in my head of that this was going to be an awesome game because I knew it had spawned sequels and the cover looked cool, right? Like, that's the classic thing when you're a kid. You look at the cover and it looks cool. Like, I don't know if anyone's seen the cover, pull it up on your phone or whatever. It looks sweet. Um, it To advance the plot, it's the classic thing where there's a mountain pass and the guards won't let you through unless you talk to a specific person in the town, and it's like that for every single gated area. And it's not even always the most obvious person. Like, if it's the town, you don't talk to the mayor, you talk to like some person outside the mayor's house that happens to know something. Or it's the castle, you don't talk to the king, it's some person in a side room. Just stuff like that. It's like the game. I went to GameFAQs for this game not because I was stuck on a fight. I just didn't know who to talk to advance. And it got to the point where I just kept GameFAQs open because I get to an area, talk to everybody, and try to leave or try to go to the next place I thought was, someone told me I had to go there and I couldn't reach it. The game wouldn't let me.
Yeah, well, it
Right?
probably also had this thing, or I've run into this in JRPGs before, where it probably had where you talk to someone and then it triggered a trigger where you had to talk to someone else, and if you had to do like an order thing. It's probably
Yeah, probably. And I mean, I played this at this point like 10 years ago, so my memory isn't super accurate on all the details, but obviously if this is on my list of games that I don't like, I'm not incentivized to go back and replay it to get more clarity on why I don't like it. I'm not going to suffer.
Yeah.
I don't get paid enough to do that. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of games I would not go back and play ever.
So, and everything else, like I said, everything else about the game was mediocre. Like just standard SNES JRPG turn-based combat. Nothing special. I don't remember hating it, but it was just boring and dull. Like there was
Yeah.
no thinking going on, which again, early SNES RPG, I'm not expecting a lot.
That's the
So
worst thing. Like I don't like. I actually really like games that are so bad that you're laughing at them the whole time.
yeah,
But when you have a game that is so solidly nothing's interesting in it and it's not bad enough to be funny, it's just awful.
yeah. And I can completely understand why someone would say like they like the game because they grew up with it. I'm sure I have games that I like that people have played now and they just think are trash. But well, actually, no one of them. Secret. I love Secret of Mana,
Yeah, that's me too.
and I hear people trash it, and then they give the reasons for why they don't like it. I'm like, yeah, that's fair. But I played it as a kid, co-op with my cousin growing up, so I love the.
See,
Right.
I played it with my brother growing up, and my mistake, and I ruined my love of Secret of Mana was I tried to play it again as an adult as a speedrunner,
Yeah.
and
So you goofed.
I goofed real hard. I hate that game now.
But yeah, so that's just an example where I know there's a game people levy criticism to, and I'm like, okay, yeah, those are fair points. I still like it. So I'm not saying if you like Breath of Fire, you're a terrible human being, but the game sucks, is all I'm saying. That's my Breath of Fire.
Yeah, well, my game is a game I was going through when I think it was like a year or two ago, and I was like, I want to play a bunch of PS1 JRPGs.
Yeah.
And so I got some recommendations from people on Twitter, which were actually good recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember if anyone recommended me this one or if I just happened to notice it because it was by one of my favorite JRPG developers. But it's this game called Beyond the Beyond. It's made by the same people that made all the Shining Force games that were in the 90s, as well as the Golden Sun games, and now Nintendo has them working in the sports game mines. So they don't make
like
JRPGs
Mario,
anymore.
didn't they make Mario Golf and Mario Tennis?
Yeah, they did.
Those are good games.
Well, they're good, but I'm just saying like they're not allowed out anymore. They just have to make sports
Yeah.
games.
Yeah.
They actually made a sports RPG, by the way. I don't know if you knew that.
Was that the golfing one?
They made a GBA tennis game.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the Mario Golf and Mario Tennis games on the Game Boy games had RPG elements
Really?
to them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Never played them.
And the GBA ones actually looked like Golden Sun.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew that because I played the tennis one on the GBA. It's fun. But
Yeah.
it was also a Mario game too, if I remember right.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was Mario Golf and Mario Tennis.
Yeah. Anyways,
Sorry
Beyond the
to derail.
Beyond. Going back to that, going back to a bad game instead of the good games. So
Yep.
the best way I can describe Beyond the Beyond is they took the relatively like mediocre plot from Shining Force One, where
Okay.
it's just like you're the good guy with the headband with the cape, you know,
Mhm.
that classic outfit.
I'm a fan of that look.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And you're fighting between the light and the darkness, you know, the classic plot thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's relatively inoffensive. That's just every JRPG from the 90s for the most part.
Yeah.
And the combat is all right. It's very reminiscent of Golden Sun. I showed Brock like pictures of it, and immediately it's like, oh, that's Golden Sun because the sprite work is like identical.
The camera work, the
Yeah.
camera positioning is like almost the same. Like it's, yeah.
Yeah, but the part that becomes offensive is in the game design outside of the combat and the story. And a lot of people, well, why is this a bad thing? Well, it has a lot of the same problems Breath of Fire 1 has that he was talking about. So, like the very first dungeon, like your like childhood best friend, I believe, and I think she might have been the romance option too. Like gets lost in a cave, and like you have to go find her. And you're in this cave, and she gets like sucked underwater by like a tentacle or something, if I remember
Mhm.
right. And the game doesn't tell you what to do, and you're just standing in this room, There's nothing like immediately obvious that you're supposed to to interact with.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked around for like a good 30 minutes, like pressing A on every tile.
Yep.
And eventually I just had to go to game FAQs, and like I just somehow missed the tile I was supposed to be pressing A on.
Oh, so it was a tile. I was gonna
It
guess that
was
you
a
had to use an
tile,
item. I
yes.
was gonna guess it was an item that you had to use
No,
for
it
the
was
tile.
a tile, and I don't know how I pot, but it's just all like don't do that. If video game developers aren't listening to this, but if they are, don't ever do that ever again.
I would hope that none of them do that at this point.
Yeah,
I can't think of a modern game that. I mean, at this point, it's the opposite, right? Where everything's marked and you just
yeah.
walk to it. So I don't think you have to worry about that one anymore.
That's actually like what I hate the most about the Xenoblade Chronicles remake. You could turn it off at least, but in the original game, you had like a quest marker where you're supposed to go,
Yeah.
and that was fine because the game is really really open world, and that doesn't bother me. But
Yeah.
they added in the remake is there's like a little like dashed line now that leads you to the quest marker you can follow. So you have
Oh,
no
like
incentive to explore unless you turn it off.
is it? Does it like appear above your character, or like on the ground? Like
It
what is
just
it?
appears on the map,
Oh, okay.
on the mini map in the top right.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like nice, but like I feel like the game it wants you to explore, and it's just kind of cheapens it to me. But
Yeah. No, that game. When I played Xenoblade for the first time, it reminded me of when I played World of Warcraft for the first time, and you just walk into a new area and just that level of unknown of, oh, well, what's over here?
yeah,
What's over
exactly.
here? Yeah.
And it always rewarded you for going off in weird places too. So
Yeah. It rewarded you by making you extremely overleveled for the main story and trivializing every story fight.
yeah, well, they actually fixed that in the remake, by the way.
Oh, really?
They added a mode that prevents you from getting experience,
Oh, okay.
so you can just turn that on.
Oh, so they make you do all the work to not overlevel if you want to do the side content.
Well, it basically hard mode, quote unquote, lets you just choose what you want your level to be. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, and so instead of balancing a mode that balances the content around the side content, they make you turn it on and off. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But so the other offensive part of Beyond the Beyond, to get back to what I was talking about, me personally, I thought the character portraits are really really goofy looking. I couldn't find any good ones to show, but I specifically remember there's some goofy ones.
I mean, they definitely look detailed, so I can see how if there's any level of goofiness, it gets exaggerated.
Yeah. Oh, and I remember another thing about the combat system that's actually bad. So, in Beyond the Beyond, they have two different health stats.
Mm-hmm.
Two different health stats. You have vitality points and life points.
Okay.
When your vitality points reach 0 and you still have life points, you don't actually die.
Just nothing happens.
You just become groggy and lose a turn, right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then next turn it like consumes life points to bring you back up to like where you can actually take actions, but it's just like needlessly complicated, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just the classic 90s thing.
It sounds like they're trying to rip off a Saga game and then just made it worse because that's how the Romancing Saga games is. You have your life points and you have your health points.
Yeah.
And when you lose all your health points, your character gets knocked out and you lose a life point. And then if they get hit while they're on the ground, they lose another life point every time they're hit.
Okay, so
If
it's D&D. Yeah.
Yeah. And then if they run out of life points, they're just dead.
Okay.
But you can bring them back with just a regular healing item. They'll just get back up, and then everyone heals to full after every combat. So it's a little different.
Yeah.
That just sounds like that does sound needlessly complicated, though.
Also, I don't know
really.
if did you ever play Shining Force?
I've dabbled, but I did not.
So
I have
in
not
Shining
completed it.
Force, when you die, like your main character dies,
Mm-hmm.
you like it takes you out of the battle. You lose half your money, right?
Okay.
They took that to the next level with Beyond the Beyond. So when you die, when all your party members die, you're sent back to your last save
Uh-huh.
with only the main character alive and half your money gone. So you have to revive everybody.
At that point, why don't you just reload your save?
I don't know. It's just a terrible design choice.
Like, honestly, that's kind of funny because Dragon Quest XI actually does that too. Where when you die, you get sent back to the last place you saved and you lose half your money. But at that point,
you can either A, reload your save, and B, the game auto saves, so you can just reload your auto save.
Doesn't the game also just let you continue from a fight if you die?
I don't remember.
I almost never died in that game, so I don't know.
It was just weird that the game kept the thing from the previous entries where you die, you go back to church and lose half your money, but there's like 3 other ways you can just get around it without even trying.
Speaking of, did you know that they were trying to make Dragon Quest XI an action RPG at one point?
No, but is that what turned into Dragon Quest Heroes? Or...
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Apparently fans in Japan were not very happy and they reversed their choice.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Because Dragon Quest XI owns.
Yeah, it does. I actually, someone on Twitter was very upset about the game, and I was pretty surprised.
That game was probably my game of the year.
Yeah, same
when
here.
It came out. It just, I know we're talking about retro stuff, but that game hit every nostalgic bone in my body.
It's a retro game, but with good quality of life and good graphics. So.
And then this is also coming from someone who said his first RPG was Dragon Warrior 1. My second RPG was Dragon Warrior 3. So you can see, if you've played Dragon Quest XI, why I would really like that game.
Yeah. Isn't Dragon Warrior 3 the first really good one, or is that
not
till 4?
Yeah. 3 is the first really good one.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 is probably the worst in the series if I had to pick one, but whatever.
Yeah, I was going to play them all, but I think they just didn't bring the collection over to Western Nintendo Switches, because I know they were making a collection.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's easy enough to find a translation of
I could just
SFC
go
ones.
to the high seas on the internet if I really want to, but...
Yeah,
So, on the topic, different topic, but slightly related, the favorite game, I guess I'll start here.
Okay.
For me, after saying how much I hate Secret of Mana, my favorite game is actually the spiritual sequel to it, which actually has a name now, so I don't have to call it Seiken Densetsu 3 the entire time. I could call it Trials of Mana.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people probably recognize because it just got a remake, which is very, very good, although a bit unbalanced.
I mean, how balanced was the original?
More balanced than the remake.
Oh, okay. Well, I tried.
They're broken for different reasons. I can go into it. So
Feel
Trials
free.
of Mana is a really cool late era Super Nintendo action RPG. And the reason it's so cool and why I like it so much is it did something really, really crazy at the time. And so there's 6 characters in the game, and they each are in pairs for their particular final dungeon and final boss that they have to fight against. But each character has a different prologue that takes 30 minutes, and they all have their own story, and they interact with each other differently depending on what party you select.
Mm-hmm.
So that was at the time when it came out, that was I think completely unique, although there might have been games that have done something similar.
Yeah, I can't think off. I mean, maybe some RPGs on the computer were doing something similar of pick a protagonist or pick a route kind of thing.
But usually computer RPGs, the main character didn't have much of a personality, so I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah.
And they companies still haven't really tried to replicate what Trials of Mana did, because it's just a lot of work.
Yeah. The game looks like it took a lot of work. It is by far one of the best looking games on that console. Yeah. It might be the best looking. I don't know. I haven't seen one that compares to it, so I don't want to call it the best. And then someone points out some other game that looks better. I think it's the best looking JRPG. I'd go with that.
Yeah. And so it's got really good co-op. It has an actual functional level up system where you get to it's not really much of a choice, because if you're playing as Duran the fighter, you're just going to throw everything into strength and vitality. But but it has a dual branching class system though that's very, very cool.
It is cool, yeah.
So you can either choose power or utility. Utility is the light classes, quote unquote, and power is the dark classes.
Always go dark.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they put it as light and dark, because it really doesn't make you evil or something. But
yeah,
and they actually did a lot more with that in the remake, because I'm not even getting into the remake. That's a whole different topic. But there's just so much to that game that they added that.
Wasn't the co-op was that in the game or was that a hack that you had to use?
It's in the game, but it's only 3-player on the hacked ROM that someone made.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's only 2-player on the console.
Gotcha. Okay, I knew there was something weird with that.
And the reason why Trials of Mana, the original, was so unbalanced is because the werewolf, they just like weren't thinking when they made him. Like, legitimately, they weren't thinking. And he could if you have the werewolf Kevin, he can just basically like kill every boss in like under like 2 minutes or something because he hits twice and he has the highest strength stat in the game. So
I can't remember. Do you have to fight the party members that you don't pick?
No, they just like show up as like in like important story moments and like exist.
Okay, couldn't remember if that was a thing.
No.
Oh, that reminds me though. I'm pretty sure when you said where you pick different party members and have different things happen, isn't Seventh Saga do something like that?
Oh, that's what I was thinking of. I was thinking of Seventh Saga, but I've never played it, so.
Okay. I haven't played it either. I just know you have to fight your own party members, and
you choose your own party in that one. I don't know if like there's like different prologues like there is in.
Yeah, I just know if you level up too much, the fights become impossible because when you fight the other PCs, they scale up faster than you.
Oh yeah.
But
that sounds like some good '90s design right there.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny that you say Seiken Densetsu 3 Trials of Mana is your favorite JRPG because I played that game and I did not like it. I didn't finish it. I remember I was streaming it and I remember you were watching me stream it because obviously you love the game, and I loved the music. The story was good. Like I said, the art was gorgeous, but I love Secret of Mana, and ST3 is just slower.
Yeah, it's a lot slower.
And a lot of it comes down to I didn't have Kevin, so I was relying on magic.
Who'd you pick? Do you remember?
It was the magician girl. I don't remember her name.
Yeah, that's.
I picked wrong. But
she's good if you don't pick her as your first character.
But my issue was just that. So if anyone's played Secret of Mana, you know that magic is broken because you can like chain cast magic and lock down enemies, right? So in Seiken Densetsu 3, they decided the fix was we're gonna pause the game while magic's being cast. And with my character, I had to cast magic to win fights, whether that was buffing everybody repeatedly, like going through every buff and casting it on everybody. So imagine just 15 seconds of pausing like 8 times
have you
just to buff.
Remake?
I have not. I don't have a Switch.
It's on computer too.
Oh, okay. I didn't have a desire to play the remake because of the original.
Okay, but I was going to mention this because in the remake it doesn't pause for magic.
Oh, okay.
And Angela is like the single most busted character in the game.
It makes sense. I'm not faulting them for doing this for balance reasons, but then you throw in the fact that okay, now I need to start casting damaging spells.
Yeah, it was actually. I think it was actually like a graphical issue. They couldn't like let the game move while magic was casting because they didn't have enough like power.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what I read.
Sometimes things just work out, I guess, to make the game more balanced. But then you also factor in bosses cast spells too.
Yeah.
And
I hate that aspect too. Don't worry.
And so like boss fights would just drag on and on. I was like, I love everything about this game, but every time I get a boss fight, like I just fall asleep.
Yeah.
So, like, I get why people like the game. I get why you like it, but I couldn't finish it. I was just like, I could be playing Secret of Mana right now and like blazing through everything.
Oh yeah, Secret of Mana is way faster. But like to go back on the Angela point.
Yeah.
Trials of Mana, like the remake. I want to say I beat the like optional super boss on the hardest difficulty in like literally 2 minutes with her.
Just spamming magic.
She has like a couple abilities. Like one of her abilities is her magic increases in power the more you cast the same spell over and over. She has another ability that refunds mana based on like damage dealt randomly. And so like you just never run out of MP, and you're just sitting there spamming the same spell over and over with like no like consequence at all, and you can move while doing it.
That sounds more like some like Path of Exile broken build
she
on
basically
purpose.
Is a Path of Exile character.
Huh.
Like she was doing like 5,000 damage a hit or something too. It was ridiculous.
I'm glad they buffed her for me in the remake after the tragedy I experienced for first picking her.
If you haven't played Trials of Mana, play it. That's me shilling for the game because the remake is really, really good.
I mean, I can add it to the list, but like my backlog is so big right now, even with quarantine, like I can't get through everything. It doesn't help that I started playing Dota, but that's its own topic.
Well, if you get it on like, I would get it on sale during Steam because it's actually pretty short.
Yeah.
Because they took out all the magic pauses, so the game suddenly like lost 10 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, you know that's when you have a good game, when you have 10 hours of casting animations. Oh, you know how you were talking to developers saying don't put random tiles, you have to.
Yeah.
Game developers that aren't listening, add an option to turn off animations.
Yes.
In every game, please.
Please remake Star Ocean 2 again and take the casting animations out.
Please remake every game and take out casting animations, please.
They're just not fun.
They're cool the first time you see them, dude. I don't want to derail too hard, but I played through Grandia 2 recently.
Oh.
Have you played that?
Yeah.
Okay. For anyone that hasn't played it, half the spells have FMVs that play that are like 20 seconds long, and like it's like a Dragon Ball Z like level of like Sephiroth like slamming a meteor in the earth for like all of these spells. And you're going to use them because they're the most efficient MP to damage thing, but a cutscene plays every time.
Well, they one-shot encounters basically at one point.
Yeah, but they don't one-shot bosses is the problem. And so, yeah, they one-shot encounters, but the encounter still takes like a minute because you're sitting there waiting on the spell to cast and then cast it. And then bosses and characters have moves that just take up forever. So that's an experience. Cool game, but like, yeah, please disable casting animation.
I actually like scrolled to Grandia 2 on my Steam list while we were talking about this. Apparently it got a patch 3 days ago.
What was the patch
just
for?
A bunch of bug fixes, but like I'm just shocked they're still patching it.
Yeah, no, I was Googling something because there was I was playing through on hard, and there was a boss that was just like exceedingly difficult. It was like a massive difficulty spike, and I was like, something wrong with this? And I like Googled it, and like the game had gotten patched like 10 days ago, and the devs were posting on like the Steam forums and stuff. I was like, what is going on? Like, why is this game active or whatever? But it was. I mean, I'm glad they're still fixing bugs.
Yeah, no kidding. I just remember like Grandia 2, a lot of the games, like a lot of the game was like genuinely like horrifying is not the word I'd use, but like some of the areas you went into are like just disgusting.
Yeah. It's a very grim game.
Yeah, like shockingly, because like it's very like very campy.
Yeah, it starts out super upbeat. You have the talking bird companion that gives the protagonist lip.
Yeah, and the protagonist is just a massive asshole.
Yeah, he is a jerk. He's a real jerk, right? Yeah. And then the game slowly progresses, and everything just gets more and more messed up. And then the best character dies. It spirals out of control real quick.
It's very unfortunate when best character dies.
Yeah, that's always bad. You
get worst character back to replace him.
Yep, you get the worst character. I wasn't gonna say anything, but yep, you get the worst character back.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, gotta love RPGs.
Oh, so while I'm thinking about it,
yep.
Is there any like JRPGs that you've like in the 90s you've been meaning to play? Because I've got a couple.
Oh, just RPGs that are on my list from the 90s?
Yeah, like older ones.
If you would have given me like a heads up, I could come up with a list because I'm sure there are.
What's that like backloggery website? Because I'm about to go on there and check my own list.
Yeah, I don't have an official backlog. Xenogears is on the list. Really just Xenogears is the only one that pops in my head because Sean Cass keeps asking me to play it, and he's been asking for like 5 years, and I just haven't.
I've been meaning to play that too because I played Xenoblade and liked it, but I've heard Xenogears is a whole nother game.
Yeah, it's not similar, I wouldn't say. At least at face value, it's not. Maybe they're related in some way, but I'm not an expert to say. And the reason why I didn't want to play is because I actually started it and played it for a couple hours, and then I realized that it's like an 80-hour game.
Wow.
And I just wasn't in the mood for an 80-hour game at the time, and I just stopped playing.
So have you ever played a game called Rhapsody, a Musical Adventure?
No, but I saw Zaspat play it.
So you know what it is?
I vaguely remember it from like 6 years ago. I don't remember much about it.
Rhapsody, a Musical Adventure is a very cute JRPG where you play as a puppet maker.
Yep.
Who likes to break out into songs spontaneously because it's a musical and also an RPG.
Of course.
So, and what's my favorite part about the game, besides just how charming it is the fact that they got like an actual good English dub. So like all the songs are really good because they can all sing.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you'd expect like they took this game in the 90s from Japan. It might have been early 2000. I'm not sure when it came out, but they took this game from like 20 something years ago, and they actually dubbed it well instead of doing a terrible job with it.
That's honestly impressive.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple. I've played Suikoden 1, and it was, you know how we describe Breath of Fire as like a mediocre SNES RPG?
Yeah.
Suikoden 1 is what I would call, it's a PS1 RPG. It is a, like, whatever.
It's a PS1, yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, but I've heard a lot of good things about Suikoden 2.
Yeah, it's actually on my list too.
Yeah, so Suikoden 2 is on my list. I've tried to play Vagrant Story a couple times, and I couldn't get into it, but Dream Boom just shills it so hard that it makes me want to try again. I don't know if I actually will be able to get into it. And the Front Mission series is one I actually want to delve into at some point.
Have you ever played Front Mission? It's really good.
No.
I've only played personally Front Mission 3 and the original for the Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like Fire Emblem. At least the Super Nintendo one is. It's basically Fire Emblem, except you're and like you just have like a complete like squad of fully customizable like just mech warriors.
Yeah, I've seen my good friend Hoda PowerPoint stream it a little bit, and I've just seen gameplay of it. It looks sick.
It's super.
The fact that there's like 6 of them or whatever, it's just a little overwhelming. Yeah. One that I'm currently in the middle of a playthrough, but I haven't played it in like 2 months, is Valkyrie Profile. Played that.
The only reason I even know that game exists, because I've never played it, is because I know who the composer is, because I've had him come up in my mentions before.
Okay,
it's the same as the Tales composer.
Gotcha. It's a very, very interesting game. I love the story. Music's great. Obviously, I'm sure you're aware the music's great. Art direction is good. 2 negatives. It has voice acting, and the voice acting is PS1 RPG voice acting, where it's just, if there was no voice acting, it would just be more impactful to me, because just the voice actors, you can tell they were handed lines and given maybe like one sentence of direction, just said, say these words, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then the other thing is, this is probably more of a me not completely understanding the system, and I'm sure if you understand the game, it's the classic, if you know how the game works, everything makes sense. But there are some massive, massive difficulty spikes in random fights. Like, you'll just go and get into a random encounter, and it'll be an enemy, and it'll just like 2-shot your party out of nowhere. Just stuff like that. And a dungeon that's surrounded by enemies that you shred. And it's not even a boss. And it's like a regular encounter that there's like 3 of them in the dungeon.
Final Fantasy V does that.
Does 5 do that?
Yeah, there's like a part where if you wander into a desert, you just die.
Oh yeah, with the the sandworm or whatever.
And there's also the part with the chocobo where you have to follow it, and if you don't follow it, you die.
But at least that it tells you to follow it, right? But this is like in almost every dungeon. This is a common thing and like throughout the game. It's not like just a random thing. And there was like a boss fight where I had to sit there and reload it like 20 times. It's like, maybe I could have came back later, but it's like, I'm here now and I did the entire dungeon and cleared out everything fine. Why is this boss so impossible? What am I missing? I don't know if it's and like I said, it's probably a me thing. probably still don't understand the system completely, and there's probably like the classic, if you just had this item from this other dungeon, equipped it, you'd be immune to this move or whatever, like stuff like that. But the game is cool. The story is, you're a Valkyrie and you go around collecting people for the Great War in the afterlife, and every character in your party is a human that's died. And so when you get them, you're actually seeing their backstory of how they died and their tragedy.
Oh, okay, that's actually pretty unique.
And it took me a while because like some of them, like it just kind of shows them doing something, then it fades to black, and you kind of have to get the implication of what they're about to do or what happens. And some of them, it shows them dying and you talk to them. But it's kind of messed up because you're like, all right, I'm getting a new party member. And then you realize like you're only getting them because like something really messed up happened. Yeah. The classic, I think the one that Dream Boom is actually posted about, so I'll go ahead and talk about it real quick, is there is a character that is a half mermaid.
Yeah.
And she meets this boy in a village, right? And he's like, hey, what's up? And she's like, I don't know, or I'm trying to find my father because he lived in the village. And apparently her father died, right? And she just wanted to be with her family. Like she wanted to reunite her mom and her dad or whatever, but her mom died. Her dad is dead now. And she's like, I just want to be with my parents or whatever, but like I can't. So I'm just going to go off and die or whatever. And he's like, no, don't, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so she, tries to kill herself. And the Valkyrie shows up and starts talking to the boy. And the boy's like, no, don't take her. Like, and I'm doing a horrible job of summarizing, but you'll get the gist of it in a second. The boy's talking to the Valkyrie, saying something along the lines of like, don't take her, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And the Valkyrie's like, and I think he says specifically, I want her to be with her family. And the Valkyrie's like, that's your wish? And he's like, yeah, I just want her to be happy with her family. And the Valkyrie's like, okay. So the Valkyrie like kills her so that she's dead with her family.
Yeah, I saw that coming as soon as you said that. I was like, oh, I know what's coming next.
Yeah, I butchered it, but like that's the point of like it's just stuff like that. Like that's the norm where it's like monkey's paw stuff or whatever, where just everyone dies. Like if you see a character, they're gonna die if they join you.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played a game similar to that. I don't think I've really ever played a game with too much death in JRPGs because there's usually too much babies about it. They don't want to make people like upset because their favorite character died.
That game does not have that problem. I will tell you that.
Well, they're already dead. Like that's the point. But like that's like my biggest frustration with the Legend of Heroes series, which is my favorite JRPG franchise at the moment.
Yeah,
is no one actually ever dies. And like people like straight up will, like people will go through things where like they should have died and like everyone assumed they died. Nope, I'm back. Hello.
So the series is Final Fantasy IV, the series?
Yes.
Okay.
Like people know what I'm talking about. And like in the newest entry that's come out in English, like a character dies at one point in the game. And I'm like, I know you're not dead. I know you're coming back in the next game. Like, and I know this for a fact because I know that this character's not dying. I don't believe them. But
yeah, you just know.
Yeah, I just know. And this only became an issue after the first 3 games in the series. When they like started like really, really, really leaning on like JRPG tropes.
Yeah.
And then everything's just gone downhill in terms of like characters dying, and every game has a beach episode.
I mean, that's just isn't that just normal now?
It's like normal now, yeah. Probably gonna have a whole podcast episode on complaining about that at some point.
Yeah, like SMT4A has a beach episode, and that's a game like you played that, really? Right? Yeah. Have you played it?
I've only played SMT4, not the.
I think it's DLC. To be fair, if we're gonna like give it any amount of credit, it's DLC. But yeah, no, the game where like one of the options is to murder your entire party. Spoilers, by the way. There's a beach episode.
It's an SMT game. I think people probably knew that.
Yeah. Well, you can not murder them. Like that's the other option, but that game, yeah, no, it has a beach episode. So
that doesn't really surprise me because a lot of the recent Etrian Odyssey games have like beach or like hot spring DLC.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at least the hot spring DLC comes with a boss. So.
Well, that makes it perfect.
Mm-hmm. It's like a useful boss too. I feel like it gives like an item that like boosts experience or something. I don't remember.
Oh, so that's the excuse people can have when they get it.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Well, I think also, if I remember right, this is for Etrian Odyssey Untold 1, I think, which is the remake of the original Etrian Odyssey. I believe you also like get like alternate like art for in battle where they're all wearing the towels.
Of course, dude. Of course. All right. I mean, you have to, right?
You have to, because Japan's all about that fan service now.
Yeah. Did you have any more 90s RPGs that were on your list?
Yeah, I do, because so...
See if I've actually played one of them, because there's so many from the 90s. I'll do this one,
because it's a Dragon Quest spinoff. Have you heard of Torneko: The Last Hope?
No.
do you remember Sorry. Do you remember who Torneko is?
Not by name.
Yeah, he's in Dragon Quest 4, apparently.
Oh, is that the merchant?
I think so, yes.
Oh, is that the mystery dungeon game?
Yes, it's the mystery dungeon game.
I've played it. Okay.
Okay, you have played it. All right.
Yeah, I just don't remember. I couldn't remember the name.
Yeah. It's the mystery dungeon game, which I love mystery dungeon games.
It's a mystery dungeon game.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm used to it.
Yeah, no, like if you play it's the name literally says it. So
I don't recommend mystery dungeon games to people if you don't like hard games, like brutally hard games.
Fair.
I'm assuming because Torneko is old enough, it probably has the mechanic that mystery dungeon games have that aren't the Pokemon ones, where you basically just lose everything when you die.
I only played it for like an hour and was like, this is not for me. So and this was probably like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So I would not be able to answer that in detail, but it is a mystery dungeon game.
I assume because like they dumbed it down for the Pokemon games, obviously, because they wanted kids to play them. And be happy, and like they're good games still, but at least in the Etrian Odyssey mystery dungeon game I've played, which I don't know why they thought combining those two franchises was a good idea.
Probably a lot of overlap between those audiences.
There is, but like they made it like extra brutal because they incorporated a bunch of dumb Etrian Odyssey game mechanics into it. Like if you don't like, okay, so let me explain the dumb mechanic I'm talking about. So you have like the individual dungeons of an Etrian Odyssey game, and in the Etrian Odyssey mystery dungeon game, you have to build forts at the top of the dungeons or somewhere in the dungeon.
Okay.
And you have to staff them with extra like party members, because every so often, like every couple days or I don't know how many days, a super monster will just like run up from the bottom floor of the dungeon, and if you don't have like a fort with people staffing it to meet it to fight it off and kill it, it will just like come into your town and destroy things you build.
That sounds awful.
Yeah,
that's like so you need to just make multiple parties basically, and then drop them off.
Yeah, and obviously like the ones at like the lower level dungeons don't have to be that strong, but it's still a pain because you have to gear them and invest in them.
Oh man, that's like that's some brutal. That's like wizardry levels of brutality.
Yeah.
Which I feel like wizardry is almost should be considered a JRPG at this point.
Well, Japan owns it now, so.
Yeah, like
I've played the Japanese-made wizardry game. It's pretty good.
Yeah, which is just interesting to me that took off like that there, but.
They love that genre because Etrian Odyssey is the same genre. They have a lot of like spin-off games that are like Wizardry and Etrian Odyssey that aren't like super popular, but I've played them.
I played one of them. It was called Stranger in Sword City.
I know which one you're talking about. I've been meaning to buy it.
I really enjoyed it. It's not perfect, but like if you like dungeon crawlers, I think it's good enough to enjoy. Super anime art style and all the you look at it, you know what you're getting kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
But it scratched the dungeon crawler itch and the like power progression itch of building up characters and making them really, really strong. And you can do the classic sit there and roll for stat bonuses at the start.
That's
for 3 hours.
That's wizardry.
Yeah. So like it has all that. It has like the floors that disable
you from using magic and stuff like that are just miserable, and you have to fight a boss while doing that, and you're just like, why is this in the game? Stuff like that.
And yeah, Etrian Odyssey has some like really cruel boss mechanics they do.
Yeah.
Like it's like it's cool, but it's also like just really just awful because
if you're not ready for it,
yeah, which
you
never
blindside you, and you have to like wrangle up a new party just to deal with it or something.
Yeah. That's a constant issue.
Yeah.
I've been playing through Etrian Odyssey, I want to say 5 recently, because I haven't played that one yet, because I sold my 3DS before it came out. And like I just like was stuck on the first boss for a while because my party just wasn't built to kill it, because it was like you had to like constantly do massive amounts of AoE damage, or it just kept doing a huge attack that killed your whole party. So
sounds like fun.
Yeah. That was a cool idea, but kind of bad execution. I think it wasn't like very well designed for me.
Give me one more on the backlog, and let's see if I'm 2 for 2 or 2 for 3.
This is a From Software game from the 90s.
Oh, so is it Kingsfield?
It's not Kingsfield. It's
Armored
similar
Core?
to Kingsfield.
What's the not Kingsfield game?
Shadow Tower.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember. I knew there was one that was like not Kingsfield, but was okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I have not played that.
I got recommended to me, I think, probably by Zaspat, because he plays all the weird shit.
Yeah.
So, I love From Software games most of the time. Not Dark Souls 2.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I'm glad you said that.
Dark Souls 2. I mean, there's just so many things wrong with it.
I don't want to start talking about Dark Souls 2 because we've already derailed like 5 times and rambled for 30 minutes on other things.
Yeah.
I could spend an hour talking about why I don't like that game.
Yeah, I mean, we should just like have an episode where we talk about Dark Souls as like a franchise and like why Dark Souls 2 is so bad.
I mean, I'm down to rant on Dark Souls 2, but I don't think it would be wise to do so at this moment.
Anyways, so Shadow Tower, I like the idea of it, but the idea of like a first person From Software game kind of horrifies me.
It's definitely clunky, I believe.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. It's a 90s game. No. I'm reading the Wikipedia entry, right?
Okay.
And it does the classic From Software thing where like the stat names don't make any sense.
That's my favorite RPG thing, actually, is when you have to relearn stat names.
Yeah.
The biggest culprit of this was actually an indie game that's on Steam called Virgo versus the Zodiac, I believe.
I know the name. I've never played it.
Let me make sure that's the name. Yeah, Virgo versus the Zodiac. It's a really fun game. It has sort of like an SMRPG, Mario and Luigi timed hit mechanics.
Okay.
Combat, but every stat in the game is just not. There's no strength, there's no dexterity, there's nothing. It's stuff like cuteness, willfulness, apathy. It's just like random emotions, right?
So they made the mistake that like every indie developer, not every indie developer, but a lot of indie developers, where they like try to be like different.
It's like too different.
Yeah.
And you eventually figure it out, right? Because there's kind of a rock, paper, scissors. Thankfully everything's color coded.
I think I watched you play that game.
So you can just remember like, okay, red versus green versus purple, like what wins, and like enemies are color coded too. So you can kind of tell like what their game plan is just by looking at them. So it starts to make sense. You just have to spend 2 hours training your brain to kind of interpret things without having to go back and look in the menu what everything does.
Yeah.
Yeah, classic.
I'm reading this, and strength in Shadow Tower doesn't actually increase your damage.
Does it increase hit?
It increases your health pool. That's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it should have been translated as endurance, but I guess like they were literal with their translation. So.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, not even endurance. I guess vitality, because endurance would be the stamina stat.
All right. I think I'm gonna go to my favorite retro RPG for retro gamers. If you think it's a good time to do
idea.
so.
I honestly completely forgot we got derailed.
It's way too easy to start rambling, and you wonder. That's kind of one of my favorite things to do, and I'm doing it right now in a long conversation. Is try to backtrack how you got to where you got to.
Yeah.
Like via all the segues. It's actually kind of funny because it's actually hard to remember.
It is hard to remember. I don't know how we got derailed.
Yeah. I could try and remember, but I don't want to sit here and cause 30 seconds of dead air. So my favorite retro RPG, this is something that changes month to month. I was telling you this before we went live, but I'm going to go with recency bias, pretty much the most recent one I played, which is Live Alive or Live Alive, however you want to pronounce it. This is a Super Famicom only game that got translated. You can find a translation if you know how to use the internet and you've ever downloaded a ROM before. I'm sure people can figure out how to acquire this game. I believe the copyright for this was actually renewed recently, right?
Yeah.
Which gets
everywhere, basically.
It gets me extremely excited. If a remake for this ever comes out, you bet I'm buying.
If they do like a Trials of Mana level remake, I'd be shocked, but that would be something.
But so this game is very, very unique RPG because you start it and you can pick between 7 different characters. And we were actually talking about this with Second Instance 3. What will let you pick different characters? This lets you pick different characters, although you end up picking all of them, so it's a little different. And each character is a completely different scenario. They all have various levels of length and how much actual gameplay versus exploration there is. There's a chapter where there's 3 fights. There's a chapter where there's up to 100 fights. There's a chapter where there's no fights, and it's more almost like an adventure game where you're just walking around a spaceship trying to solve a murder mystery, essentially. And it's more of like a horror. It's like a sci-fi horror chapter. And it's really weird because you're given no context when you start the game. You just start the game and you're thrown into this pick a character menu, right? And none of the characters seem to be related in any way. In fact, the characters themselves aren't related at all. There is a common thread throughout the scenario. So yeah. I don't want to get into it right now, but there is a common thread throughout the scenarios. But the characters are, you have a caveman, and the unique thing about that is there's no dialogue. Everything is emoted, like above their heads in little like comic bubbles, right? Because they haven't figured out how to talk yet. You have the Wild West, where you play as basically like Clint Eastwood's character in The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, the Sundown Kid, and you have to save the town from the bandits, right? You have, God, what else is there? You have the Wrestler, and it's basically a Street Fighter chapter where the Wrestler is also a blue mage because he's trying to learn everybody's fighting styles, and you have this character selection screen where you're picking different characters, and one of the characters is literally Hulk Hogan. And then you end up like fighting the final boss, who looks and kind of acts like Geese Howard from like the SNK fighting series stuff. He's like very similar to him, actually.
Yeah.
You have the Kung Fu chapter where you're a Kung Fu master and you have to raise your pupils and train them, and depending on how you raise them, you end up playing as one of them out of the 3. You have the sci-fi chapter, which is the one I talked about, where there's no combat outside of a VR training machine and the boss, where you don't have to do the VR training, but it's like a horror, very atmospheric. It's really cool. You have the future setting where you play as Akira, and it's pretty much inspired by the anime Akira. It's like, kind of future cyberpunkish, and you're a psychic. You have to rescue these people, and there's giant robots and mechas and stuff. There's the ninja chapter where it's like an infiltration mission, and you can either kill everybody, you can spare everybody if you sneak by everything, or you can kill some of them. It's like the original Undertale, which, in fact, going into a little bit more detail, the boss theme for this game is called Megalomania. And I'm pretty sure Toby Fox said that this is one of his favorite games or whatever, and
that doesn't surprise me at all because I remember enough about Live Alive to agree.
Yeah, and the theme for Megalomania inspired Megalovania, and it's really annoying when I'm like, I want to listen to Megalomania, and I put it in, and like it tries to like think I'm searching for Megalovania, and I have to put in Live a Live, and it's also an Incubus song as well, so it's like really hard to find it. But I think I'm missing one.
Oh, there's a robot. Is that the sci-fi one?
That's sci-fi. Okay. Yeah. 1 second.
No, gonna have to edit out a horn honk that just happened.
What horn honk? I didn't hear a horn honk. You didn't
hear it? My mic actually filtered it?
No, I was trying to play along, actually.
Okay.
Wow. Oh, that was the 7. So you play through all of those, and then an 8th chapter opens up. And I'm really only talking about the story, but the story of this game is fascinating. So, spoiler alert, if you haven't played this game, I would highly recommend you go and play it, because I actually think the way the story twists, for lack of a better term, near the end is actually like, I don't know, brilliant is a strong word, but it was very impactful. So you play as this 8th character, or the 8th character pops up and you select him. He's a knight. And throughout the rest of the game, there's no random encounter. You can see everything on the map. It's like every chapter is almost like a deconstruction of something in a JRPG in some way, whether it be the no encounters, the stealth section, the Street Fighter section, just everything feels like it's not a typical JRPG, right?
Yeah.
The last chapter is the night chapter, and it's almost like you got dropped into a Dragon Quest game. Like your character looks like he belongs in a Dragon Quest game. There's now random encounters. There's just a random big bad evil demon that's resurrected, and you have to go and get the other old heroes and take the hero sword and the hero shield and go and kill the demon, right? And you go and do this, or you think you do, and then your best friend betrays you, and then you get tricked into killing the king, and all this just bad stuff happens to the hero, and he just has a mental breakdown. He just breaks down, and he's like, well, everyone betrayed me, everyone turned on me, everyone's calling me this monster. I'm just going to become the monster, because at this point, why not? And it turns out he's the one trying to... He basically turns into like an edgy nihilist, for lack of a better term. And he's causing all of the problems in all of the other chapters that you're playing as. Like, he's actually the like progenitor of all of the evil that's happening throughout time. And you end up ending his chapter with him becoming evil. And then there's a 9th chapter. And in the 9th chapter, you can pick any of the 7 people you played as earlier, or you can play as the warrior that turned evil. And if you play as the warrior that turned evil, you actually go through and redo all the boss fights from the 7 chapters, but you play as the boss and win as the boss and kill all of them.
That's
cool. And then credits just roll. Or if you pick any of the other 7 characters, you start out as them, and you are like teleported to the knight's world, and you literally have to gather your party, and you're still in random encounter land. So you're like in JRPG world after being in these other scenarios, and you gather your party and get like all the ultimate gear, and then you go and kill them. And just the fact that it goes from like massive deconstruction where everything's different and it's all these compact scenarios that feel like separate games, and then like basically the last half to third of the game is just standard RPG. It's like whiplash. It's just complete whiplash, and it's really just weird. It's a very weird game. It's an extremely different game. The music owns. I didn't even get into the combat. The combat is like a grid-based, turn-based game where when it's your character's turn, you can either do an action that has a certain amount of range and affects a different amount of squares, and it has a wind-up time potentially, so enemies can potentially move out of the way. You can move, but moving takes up like action time, but there's no indicator of whose turn is when. So it's a little awkward at first because you're like, well, I want to move, but then you move and then the enemy moves and you're like, what? I thought it was my turn. But you can just move around as much as you want, but the enemy's going to move until you do something.
Yeah, I don't mind that as a design as long as it's like not too difficult, right?
It's not super difficult. It just takes getting used to is the thing. But no, the gameplay's great, music's great. The fact that there's 7 different scenarios at the start, it's really nice because you're like, I'm just going to do this scenario, and then you play through it, and it was like 2 hours or whatever. It's like, perfect, I'm just going to stop here. But then one of them's like 30 minutes, and you're like, well, I'm going to do another one too then. So it's like it's very good if you're just not trying to binge on something, right?
Yeah.
No, I could keep going about this game. Like I just.
So I think I remember what happened to me when I played it as like a 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Is like I just like played through like 4 of the scenarios and I was just like, well, nothing's happening, and I just stopped.
Oh.
I think I remember now.
It was kind of funny because I was streaming it and I didn't actually notice this. Someone actually had to point it out. All the bosses that you fight is the 7 characters. They all have some form of the name O-D-O. Like the letter O and then D-O in their name. And I didn't actually notice it. Someone pointed out on like the third one, like, wasn't that the same name as the dude you fought in the cowboy chapter? And I was like, oh, it is. And then you realize all the bosses have the same name or some form of the same name, like really close, right?
Yeah.
And that was the name that the knight ends up taking or whatever. His name is kind of close to it. And he's just like, well, now I'm the Demon King, and I'm going to inflict pain and suffering on everybody, blah, blah, blah. And the game has like lighthearted moments. Like there's a recurring father-son duo that when they just show up, the dad just dies for no reason and the kid starts crying. It's actually like pretty dark, but the game plays it up for comedy for some reason.
I don't know, Japanese humor.
Yeah,
there's probably something it's referencing from Japan.
Probably. Like the caveman has in the caveman scenario, I can't remember if it's him or he has a gorilla that's his buddy. One of them gets a move where they literally just throw poop. I'm pretty sure it's the gorilla, and it leaves poison tiles on the floor in an area that damages the or you if you step in it. So it's that kind of game, right?
Yeah.
Like, the robot chapter, you're stuck on a spaceship, and I'm not going to say which one it is, but when I got on the spaceship, I was like, this is giving me both 2001: A Space Odyssey and Alien vibes at the same time. And it's the atmosphere on some of these chapters is amazing. So I know I ranted for like 10 minutes on this game. I could probably talk for another 30. If you like RPGs and you want something different, definitely check it out.
Yeah. It's a shame that JRPGs don't like try stuff as much as they used to.
Yeah, this definitely tried something, and I would definitely say it succeeded at what it tried to do.
Yeah. Like I've played a lot of modern stuff, and I know you haven't played too much, but it's very, very formula based now.
Yeah.
The only game I can actually give kudos to recently to like actually like actively trying something new was Tales of Berseria. So
I don't know how much. If you're you're not a Saga guy, are you?
No.
Saga Scarlet Grace.
Did that come
that
out
game?
Like a new game or the?
Yeah, it came out. Let me check. Saga. I'm not doing research beforehand. This is flying by the seat of my pants. It came out in 2016, but it got a re-release last year for Switch and Steam, and that game is awesome. There's gonna be a Saga episode at some point where it's gonna be me vomiting Saga at you for an hour and a half, and you're just gonna be like, oh, that's cool, man.
I'll go play Saga Scarlet Grace before then.
Yeah, I think you should. It's my highly recommend list. Top five RPGs for sure. But live alive. Live a evil, because I think it's like backwards on the cover, right? Yeah. Like just
live a evil is pretty appropriate.
Yeah, it's on theme. Like when you play the game, man, definitely play it. Also, Cowboy is the best. Cowboy, then Wrestler.
There needs to be more Western RPGs.
Yeah, dude. When I was just like, dude, I'm a freaking cowboy and I'm like saving the town or whatever. Like, and then I know I said the music's awesome, but specifically the boss theme, I almost want to tell. I know I already said the name, so people might have looked it up. If you're planning on playing the game, don't look up the boss theme. Because I specifically remember when I got into a boss fight and started playing, like, I was enjoying the game. And I did the Cowboy chapter first for anyone that's played the game, and that might give more context. I was enjoying the game. It was kind of neat. It was kind of quirky. And I got into a boss fight, and the boss theme started playing. I was like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah.
Like I am on board. Like to give an equivalent thing, since we already talked about Toby Fox and Undertale, for anyone that's played Undertale, that moment when you're fighting Papyrus and he turns your heart blue. And he's like, "You're blue now, that's my attack." And then the fight actually starts. It was very similar to that experience. So, Toby, you did it. You imitated the game that you liked in a way that was different, but gave me the very same feeling. It was like the exact same feeling to me. So that's what I got.
Yeah. Well, I think we're probably about time to wrap it up.
Yeah,
I would say.
I definitely think
for over an hour now about retro RPGs. We could go on and on and on, but at that point, I don't think anybody's gonna want to listen. So.
Yeah, I've listened to podcasts where they're longer than. Once it gets over like 2 hours, I have to just stop and come back to it. Yeah, and honestly, usually hour to hour and a half is about the right length for me. So I'm assuming that we've already bored a lot of people like 30 minutes ago. But it's the first episode, man.
Yeah.
We're getting our feet wet. I'm sure I've talked over you.
You can be Critical Role and record 3 hours every week and get people to watch it.
Speaking of which, we need a name. So please give us a name.
I was telling them every name I could think of sounds like it's some stupid tabletop name, like Level Up or Critical Hit or something like that.
The only clever one I came up with, which may end up being used, who knows, is 100 Hours in an Hour, which is a play.
I think I do like that one a lot.
I like it a lot. It's hard to like quote unquote like find out about, but in terms of like cool sounding to me.
See, I like it, but there's one problem is we went over an hour.
Yeah, that is the issue. I'll just
have
100 hours about in there.
100 hours in an hour and a half almost rolls off the tongue as well.
100 hours in about an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But that's all I got, man.
Yep.
And I don't know how frequently. I'm assuming we're gonna try and record weekly.
Either weekly or I think probably twice a month is probably what I end up doing.
Bi-weekly,
Yeah, because then I can edit in between.
Yeah, we can definitely kind of plan out a little more and all that stuff. So look forward to this bi-weekly.
Yeah,
I had fun.
Bi-weekly always confuses me because I always think it means twice a week.
Same.
Yeah. See you guys whenever this next episode comes out.
Yeah, man. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you didn't, let us know how much you didn't like it, and then maybe we'll fix it if we liked your feedback.